All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this exchange that we've organized between some women-owned fintech companies in Canada and Holland FinTech. My name is Wyndham Juno, and I've been doing the liaison part on the Holland side. And Don, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah, okay.
So we have an agenda for the session. I will start off saying hello, then Esther Groen will take over to give a view on Holland FinTech in the Netherlands, followed by 4 pitches from 4 women-owned fintech companies from Canada. And then we will wrap it up at the end. We hope to keep this to an hour. At the end of each pitch, we hope to have time for some Q&A from the audience. So feel free to type it in the chat or just when I ask, turn on your mic and ask a question. Next slide. And from the Holland FinTech team, we are 3 of us here today. I'm Wyndham Juno. I work as the event manager. Don Gintel is the CEO and founder of Holland FinTech. And Esther Groen, who I will hand it over to, is secretary to the board. Go ahead, Esther. Oh, yeah. I should share now.
Yeah, Esther, I will just take a very short word for the general board. So thank you for opening up with them. And a warm welcome to everybody in the session. So I want to give you all a warm welcome on behalf of the Canadian embassy that is organizing this mission. So then, in the next days, it will further take place. There are 12 business women in tech-led companies that are being introduced initially now in the Netherlands, but also afterwards in Belgium and then in Poland, on 3 sectors. There's 3 subjects that they represent. They do clean tech, e-health, and fintech. And today specifically, we are going to spend attention to fintech. So thank you very much, Holland FinTech team, to organize this. So you will give an overview of what's happening in the Netherlands on the subject. And so we are very pleased to that. So thank you to Wyndham, Esther, and Don. Before giving the word back to you, also some attention for the 4 organizations that are being represented in the FinTech team. There are Shelby Austin from Arteria AI. It's Karen Moynihan from Boss Insights. It's Nandini Jolie from CryptoMill. And it's Fionn Lee Madden from Fairly AI. So all welcome also to the Dutch guest participants in the program. And back to Wyndham and Esther for their introduction. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Esther, I'll go ahead and share, and then you can begin.
Yeah.
Nope, Don's
welcome, everybody. Can you hear me? Good, and great to be here. As said, I'm working for Holland FinTech, secretary to the board and business lead, but I'm also in the executive board of the European Women Payments Network. So I love to see this. That we see more and more fintech and tech organizations led by women. So I'm very happy to be here. I want to tell you a little bit about the Netherlands and fintech, and a little bit about association. So I prepped a slide deck, so please go to the next slide. And I'm sure you've heard a lot about the Netherlands, but let's go, the Netherlands, we are the country of the water, the trade and the collaboration. So this is what we're proud of. Especially Don has a very particular water focus, but we're the land of the Delta with the Rhine and the Maas. Most of our country is below sea level, which is sometimes a concept that most foreigners really do not get, but we are very strong in water management and facing some very interesting challenges. We're protecting our land, particularly through collaboration, and that's, I think, something that's in our genes, and that you also see in our financial infrastructure, and I will tell you a little bit about that later. We became a republic after declaring independence from the Spanish king, and which sparked our golden age, also traveling the world, doing business in different continents by sea. And this resulted in the first joint stock company in 1602 and the first stock exchange in 1611. So this is how we have some financial and trading roots in the Netherlands. We're a kingdom now, and we have a very democratic and extensive parliamentary democracy with 16 parties represented and counting. Next slide, please. We're a small country, but very well positioned in terms of a gateway to Europe. We have a big haven, a big port. We're very open to different cultures and influences. So that's what we use also in the way we do our business. We're one of the founders of the European Union. So her collaboration in that sense, as said, is part of our genes. Next slide, please. And maybe a little bit about the Dutch. We're also very highly connected and digitally savvy. If you look at, we have over 17 million citizens, of which almost everybody has a mobile phone, internet connection, has an account, has access to finance. And we're very used to doing platforms and in communication in different ways. Digital payments is very well established in the Netherlands, particularly with one of our biggest payment methods, which is Ideal, actually based on collaboration model between banks using each other's infrastructure to provide and to make it a very scalable payment method. So this is, I think, a snapshot on how the Dutch operate in today's economy and society. Next slide, please. And we're also an important financial hub in Europe. What you see is we have a very open culture, also from a fiscal and a business perspective. So it attracts a lot of financial service providers to the Netherlands. Next slide. With also, of course, some key players from Dutch origin, being ABN AMRO, the Volksbank, ING and Rabobank. Next slide. And we will share these slides, guys, with you if you're interested. We also have a very strong investment landscape. Next slide. With also some very key players in the insurance and pension landscape. Aegon is a big one, NN, Robeco, and APG are really important players in this field as well, in Achmea. Next slide. And they all contribute to a rapidly growing ecosystem. And this is what Holland FinTech has been doing since its foundation, which was in 2014. We've been mapping the FinTech space. And it started in 2015, which was a big mail and some logos. But you see the mail turning smaller and smaller, and the logos and the number of logos growing. So the ecosystem has been growing very rapidly. And we're very proud of that, of course. Next slide. And these are some globally known FinTech successes. Adyen, I think most of you all know. Bank, the fully digital bank in the Netherlands, going international. Molly, which is a PSP organization. Tiki and Ideal. Tiki is a peer-to-peer platform based on the infrastructure of Ideal. Box is a trading platform. Savino is an invoicing and in-accounts payments automation technology provider. And CM, also booming business at the moment, started as a messaging platform, is now also in payments. And Flow Traders is a trading technology service provider. And there are more, but this is just a snapshot. Next slide, please. And an important element to our ecosystem, of course, is also the stakeholder fields. So the supporting mechanism around that, the relationships that we have with platforms like, for instance, Holland FinTech, but also TechLeap, Money 2020, which is a yearly global event really focused on the FinTech and the tech business. Startup Bootcamp focusing on helping startups getting started and really get the funding they need in the Netherlands are really important drivers. Next slide, please. And not unimportantly, we have a very high quality regulatory regime. The Dutch Central Bank, the AFM, the Authority for Consumer Markets and Personal Data, supported by the Ministry of Finance, give us a good reputation when it comes to taking care of a secure and safe payment infrastructure. And we're known for that. So if you get licensed here, you can easily passport to other countries as well. It's not an easy process, I have to say, but yeah, quality doesn't come cheap. In short, all kinds of elements that give the Netherlands and create a great mix for a thriving ecosystem. And on the left side, you see the current FinTech map. So as it is today, it's booming. Loads of organizations, you can hardly see the mill anymore. The inner circle are all organizations within the licensed and the regulatory space. The outer circle are all kinds of enablers, starting from technology, business services, and advisory services and legal expertise. And on the right-hand side, you see some of our awards positions. Take a look at that. But it demonstrates that within the Netherlands, we have built a very interesting ecosystem for digital finance, amongst others. And maybe deep diving a little bit on the Dutch FinTech ecosystem, which is on the next slide. Interesting for you guys to know is that by far still the biggest segment is the payment, cash management and e-commerce companies. Following is the investing, asset management and capital markets segment. And the third runner-up is accounting and ERP. But we also see the crypto space growing, and we see personal finance and wealth management growing. So it will be interesting to see how this top three will be next year or in 2 years. Yeah. And then a little bit about Holland FinTech. Next slide, please. What we feel, and I think the purpose of Holland FinTech is really to create access to finance and technology. It should be accessible for everybody, no matter where you are. Each business and each person should get access in the right way to finance and technology, because this is the only way that we can empower economy, and this is the only way where people can empower themselves. So that's one of the key drivers of Holland FinTech. Next slide. Which means that our mission is very much on building that thriving ecosystem. I'm waiting for the next slide. Brendan?
Slight delay, I believe.
I think so. So what we really want is build an ecosystem where we can collaborate, where we can help parties learn, connect, etc. Let's check in with Wyndham. Are you still there, Wyndham?
Yes, I'm here. Dawn has them, but it's delayed, I think.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the slide's already up, but it takes a while for it to load, apparently. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you are. I work towards a level playing field, and as said, inform key stakeholders and support the innovators. Next slide, Dom. I'm telling this too quickly, I guess. That never happens. That technology that my voice outpaces technology. So what we do is really connect. What we want to do is really build a strong and impactful community. Don, he's the founder of all this. He founded this in 2014. We're currently governed by our members. So we have since the beginning of this year, we're an association governed by our members. And if you look at our member base, it really ranges from startups to scale-ups to incumbent players. But the majority are the startup and the scale-ups. And they really need a place to connect. And this is where Holland FinTech has positioned itself. And in doing so, what we do is we connect all stakeholders in the field. Regulators, sponsors, other non-governmental bodies, other FinTech hubs in different countries, like for instance, yourselves. We work cross-border really to create visibility on this space, its impact to other industries, and really help tell the story in that sense. Next slide, please.
I generally click it before you say next slide, but it still takes a bit of
yeah,
work.
No. So maybe good to know is that we have approximately about 300 members. We have a program, really connecting the members in between and getting all the topics that they feel are relevant out. And we organize a lot of events ourselves as well. And I think one of the a landmark event that we do every year is Amsterdam FinTech Week. And we're also very much present at Money 2020, but Amsterdam FinTech Week might be an interesting one for you to put on your calendar. So we will share the details, which is a full week of talking FinTech in all different kinds of perspectives, from the social side, from the business side, from the enabling side, from the technology side, anything. And it really brings the whole ecosystem together. So let me stop here because I can go on for a long time, but maybe ask if you have any questions on Holland FinTech and our country.
So thank you for that. I love the fact that you're also on the top 5 of the happiness report. I thought
yes, we are.
Yeah, it's important because with this pandemic, I'm learning and seeing more and more how people are challenged. So I think that's a wonderful an important aspect. And I just want to say personally that my father he's retired now, but he was with the World Bank. And so I grew up in England. I'm a prodigy of London School of Economics, but I've been to Amsterdam at least a dozen times. And the last time I was there, just before the pandemic, I'd gone to a wedding in Germany, and then I took a van full of about 15 people from 6 different countries because my family is very eclectic. To Bruges for the day, but on the way back, it was midnight. And of course, I had this big car with all kinds of strange looking people from different countries. And I got pulled over by 2 Dutch cops, and they took me to the shoulder of the highway and came with, those big torches on your face. And I was so nervous. And then when they asked me for the passport and I gave them my passport, it was like they became butter. Canadian. And then they were so nice. They escorted me back to the highway. So I am already in Amsterdam in my heart. So thank you for that. It was very interesting, but thank you so much.
You basically freed us, right?
Yeah.
With some other countries. So we'll never forget that. Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nadine.
I do have a question for you, Esther.
Yeah.
So are there any existing Canadian FinTech that's part of Holland FinTech? Already.
Originating from Holland FinTech. Maybe that's a question for Don. He knows the member base by heart almost.
Yes, I don't think we have any original Canadian companies currently as a member. What is interesting, though, that one of our board members is actually moving to Toronto in January to build out the subsidiary of that from InShared. They're building out the Canadian branch of that. So she's actually going to come towards you, and in any case, she's really keen to connect, we know.
Yeah, and she's going to stay on the board, so we're going to learn from her experience
exactly
as well. Yeah, so that's InShareTech. Yeah.
Just one more question. Have you seen any Canadian companies, and this might be a question for Mark or Philip or Toby, but have you seen any Canadian companies really come in, or really just overseas companies come in and have real success in the market? Is there a really good blueprint that you've seen that we could potentially look up and learn from?
Well, perhaps I can answer that question because I deal with Canadian companies on a daily basis. Perhaps interesting for you to know that the online tax form that every Dutch person over 18 has to fill out is originally devised by a Canadian company. The company has been taken over by an American company, but Canada was at the forefront of a lot of online business and especially payment. Well, the big winners in the Netherlands are obviously CGI, OpenText. They're doing really well. Constellation Software. These are ICT companies that do a lot of stuff, but they also do some financial software and perhaps not pure fintech, but they do a lot more. But part of what they do is also in fintech. I doubt whether they are members of the Holland FinTech group. BlackBerry is also doing quite well with the new software, and they are partner of the Hague Security Delta, because in The Hague, of course, we have a very big cybersecurity hub. And it's not in fintech, but it's in cyber. But as you know, blockchain and fintech are quite well related. They're kind of brothers. Well, you need one without the other, etc. So there is some overlap, and we do see that Canada is very strong in this area because of the need of the country. The big country, Canada, was the first country in the world to have connected the schools in. I believe it was already in the early 90s that this was connected, so that even Inuit children were able to get lessons. So this is very brief, but yes. So Canada is in the picture.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Although BlackBerry and OpenText are big and beautiful, so I guess they were fintech at one point. But it's interesting. You made a comment about The Hague. Do you, in your opinion, and this is also for you, Don, just from FinTech Holland's perspective, do you all perceive FinTech as being separate to cybersecurity? Because you made a mention there, and I am, of course, going to talk to you a little bit about cybersecurity, but I'm curious if your perception is separating the idea of FinTech, or do you see a fold into it?
I'm afraid I missed the last part of your question. So what is separate from what?
Do you perceive, Don, FinTech as being separate to cybersecurity? I'm just picking up from a comment.
Yeah, no, sorry, we just missed a piece of audio there. So thanks for clarification. So generally, yes and no. So we basically see a very distinct cybersecurity or general security domain, which also moves outside the financial industry, which is very often driven also by the defense industry and the Justice Department. So you see that they basically are in their own world looking at security, but you actually see that the financial industry very much takes the approach of financial crime towards cybersecurity. So they have a slightly different approach, but since there's such a big focus on it and such a high role as well as sort of a guardian of the economic rails, I would say, you see that they play an important role as well. So there are very strong connections, but we do still see that they kind of move kind of independently as well.
Got it. Okay, awesome. So I'll talk more when it's my turn, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. I think it's a good idea if we start with the pitches now. So up first, we have Fionn Lee Madan, who is the technical co-founder and COO from Fairly.
Sounds good. I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. Hi, so I'm Fionn Lee Madan, COO and co-founder of Fairly AI. We are a AI governance, risk, and compliance SaaS solution for your AI models. We graduated from Accenture's FinTech Innovation Lab out of London, UK earlier this year, where we validated our product with 14 Tier 1 banks. And we are the current winner of UBS Future of Finance Challenge in the tech and cybersecurity category. You may have read these news headlines already. Apple came out with a credit card that was biased against women. Facebook was in congressional hearing in the United States because their AI algorithm was found to be harmful to children. Amazon had an AI recruitment system that was biased against women because it was, using historical data that prefer men for all tech jobs. And most recently, Zillow, which is a real estate company in the United States, had to shut down their entire AI buying business because, proper risk management wasn't done on their AI. And it is a prime case of how when you don't have proper model risk management for AI, that, it can have real financial impact. And why is that happening, right? So with COVID, it really accelerated the timeline on, the amount of data that's being collected in the cloud. All the Tier 1 banks we talked to have either migrated to the cloud or already, have plans to migrate to the cloud with the goal of doing more AI. And with more data, you can, create more powerful AI algorithms that are used to what we call AI creation, making, real high-stake decisions using your AI algorithm. And therefore, the degree of risk using AI has increased. That has been noticed by the academic world as well as the regulators. And hence, in the last 2 years, there has been over 300 guidelines published by various nonprofit and government bodies around the world, with the EU coming out with the first draft of their AI regulations in April earlier this year. And it's something that's closely watched by people in the industry because it's the same governing body that came out with GDPR, which became the gold standard for data privacy law around the world. So everyone's looking at this first draft of AI regulations as, the potential to be the gold standard for AI regulations around the world. But within the financial services industry, right, what you have is a established model risk management framework called 3 lines of defense. And, SR 11-7 from the Federal Reserve Board in the United States is the gold standard in this case. But traditional model risk management has, is a very serial process where, you have your first line, your developer, owner, user, your second line is your validator, your governance and risk team, and then your third line is your internal auditors and compliance team. And traditional statistical quant model can take anywhere from 2 weeks for a simple model to 2 years for portfolio models to get past these 3 lines. And with AI, there's this, increased volume, increased velocity, and increased complexity in the models that they're building. There's one particular concept called model drifts and data drift. Once your AI models is out in production, seeing production data for the first time, the performance can change, the accuracy can change, and then it needs to go through the 3 lines of defense again. And you just cannot afford to have, 2-year model validation cycle anymore. And this is where, the second and third line of defense are getting stuck right now, is because it's just too much volume, complexity, and velocity for them to handle all the AI model that's being built. Some of the most advanced banks that we talk to, they have 1,000, 1,500 AI models that's waiting to be pushed out in the next 2 to 3 years. And on the other hand, they all know that AI regulations are coming, and they're all trying to proactively do something about it. And that's where we came in. We have a patent pending model risk ops technology that helps to operationalize AI by embedding controls in each step of your AI model journey. And how do we do that? We are a SaaS solution that first allow you to select or create smart policies. And this is important because it's a very fast changing regulatory environment we're living in the AI world. And each country is coming up their own regulations and policies, and companies have their internal policies. So the ability for companies to, create these smart policies is something that resonated with the banks we talked to. And then based on this policy, we connect automated controls to your AI and ML models. And then we monitor these controls for both financial and non-financial risks, and ultimately generating business and compliance reports. So what are smart policies? They are basically quantitative conditions and qualitative requirements that are verifiable by human beings. There's the concept of human in the loop in the AI world, and this makes it scalable and repeatable. And then these automated controls can be connected to in-house built AI ML models. For your vendor third-party models, we connect to your input and outputs so that we can monitor, financial risk, legal risk, ethical risk, reputational risk. Here's an example of a option pricing model. During COVID, what you see that spike there that turned into red, that's what we help monitor. And it's explainable in the sense that we can drill down and see what kind of parameter contributed to the risk. And the standardized reporting system that we build is an additional layer that sits on top of your traditional AI ecosystem. This is also important in the global banking world because you may have a center of excellence that have 10, 15 people in it, but you have 700, 1,000 data scientists scattered across the organizations, and they're all using different data modeling and explainable monitoring platforms, but they all have to report to the same ethics, risk, and compliance function. So having the standardized layer that is pluggable to any model and data framework is something that also resonated with the banks we talked to. if you have read any AI guidelines, fairness, auditability, transparency, explainability are what upcoming regulations are looking for. And where we really differentiate ourselves is what the ICO and the Alan Turing Institutes call process-based explainability. A lot of the existing tools that came out in the last 3 years are what they call outcome-based or post-hoc explainability tool. What a process-based explainability tool is we really capture the micro decisions that data scientists and the model validators are making along the way to provide the explainability that regulators are looking for. And the customer that we're working with can save up to 30% of their time per model risk management cycle while improving their model safety. And these are very high price resources, advanced model, right? So at, some banks that are planning to roll out 1,000 models, that's an estimated saving of $11.2 million per year. And we work with different customers, so depending on where you are, we can adapt our solution. Yep.
Field. Yeah, we need to, there's 3 more to come.
Okay, sure. Yeah, this is where it ends anyways.
Exactly.
My co-founder and I, and we have an amazing board of advisors. Thank you.
Thank you, Fion. Any questions from the audience right now? Okay, then we'll go on to our next pitcher. It is Shelby Austin, who is the CEO of Arteria AI.
Hey guys, give me 1 second to just throw up a pitch here. Thank you so much for having me. It's just loading. We'll give it 1 second. Okay, we are a Canadian company that focuses on helping global banks with their client documentation challenges. Just by way of background, well, we've only been around for about 13 months. We spun out of Deloitte, and so the product is quite a bit more mature. You can see that because it's an award-winning product, and also because we're backed by some really, really big banks around the world and have a client footprint on 4 continents and are have been deployed for a few years now, and so it's a very real product, hopefully solving a real challenge for the bank.
Hey Shelby, your slides are not visible if you are trying to share something.
Oh, they were visible to me. Let me try again. I can see them on your screen.
Yeah,
okay.
Now they're loading for us.
Okay, perfect. Let's try it again. Can you see them? Okay, perfect.
Yep, you're good now.
Teams, good old Microsoft Teams. Yeah, and so that is basically who we are. In terms of our problem space in particular, some of the biggest challenges that banks have is we think that everyone's done amazing digital transformations in so many spaces, including payments, as was discussed earlier, cyber, et cetera. But sort of the forgotten transformation, because it's probably so boring, is around documentation. There's just so much unstructured data across the bank. And what we find is that the bank often generates this data initially digitally, and then it gets sent to customers and it gets printed, emailed, reviewed. And so all of the structure of the data becomes, messy, and we find ourselves having to re-digitize or re-manually input things back into systems, which can be incredibly costly. The ICCM did a study on client documentation. Again, they're as nerdy as we are, and found that it costs between $10,000 and $15,000 per document that gets signed by a client. And so, really, if you add up the millions of pieces of paper around the bank, that's a ginormous transformation that still has yet to occur. And for us, that's a problem that really spans across the bank. Our primary focus is in 3 areas. Number 1, right across capital markets, everything from DCM, ECM to the ISDA suite of docs, which we'll talk about here. Number 2, our sort of second primary use case is all around treasury and custody, everything from, custody through record keeping, through valuation services, et cetera, and helping out with documentations around there. And the third one is all around lending. That could be anything from leverage lending to syndicated lending, right down how it flows into CLOs from there. And so that's sort of the key focus for now, but every day we're adding new use cases, including for one bank, 6 new countries last week. in the lending space. So you know, we're seeing new use cases every day. In terms of our tech stack, it's highly microserviced and modular. If you take nothing else away from today, we understand that banks come to this problem with so much technology already that we want to make sure we can slot in a really mature way and understand the problems we're helping them solve. Just, you know, maybe 3 key highlights from here, because I know we're on a tight time frame. Number one, the secret to our sauce is that when we help a bank generate documentation in any of those spaces, what we're really doing is applying a data model to that, which can flow down into your downstream systems and your downstream taxonomies. That can be incredibly important in order to operate the bank, of course, and can save tons of cost along the way. In addition, because of that data model, the major benefit is that we're able to help negotiators become superhuman and have a whole bunch of historical data available to them that they never had before. So we're able to get them to move faster. And then finally, we are able to help all of the various stakeholders, credit, risk, etc., as they need to go in for their own journeys around this documentation piece. How do we speed them up? What you see up here today is actually a live use case where we're live around the world with a tier 1 investment bank and have been able to take their time to just one set of client docs down by about half, which has been really significant to their trading footprint. Guys, the last point I'll say before I sort of round it off here is our background is that I used to run AI analytics and data for Deloitte. That's where we spun out of. And so you won't miss the point that one of our biggest points of pride is that in this space, the sheer amount of the problem can't just be dealt with automation alone, and that we have to use you know, really good principles of analytics, AI, and data as well. And so hopefully we've piqued your interest enough to come learn a little bit more about the product, knowing that we'd love to have a bit more of a chat with you about it as well. I'll leave it at that for now, and happy to take questions.
Yes, thank you, Shelby. Very concise and a nice presentation. Do we have any questions from anyone right now? Appears not at the moment. Hopefully at the end we'll also have a few minutes, so if they come up, we can save a few minutes for those as well. All right, next in line is Nandini Jolly, who is the CEO at CryptoMill.
And do you see my screen?
You're good to go.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to try to cover a vast area of focus right now from a cybersecurity perspective, but I also want to give a quick kudos to my marketing team that pulled up this beautiful picture of Netherlands to share with all of you. A quick background on us: we are proudly Canadian. We spent the last 8.5 years around innovating in the space of cybersecurity, and I'm a avid kickboxer, and I believe in taking the fight to the hackers as opposed to being reactive. Our focus has been very much a data-centric model, and in the next few slides, I'm going to share a little bit about how our current software suite works. We are globally patented in many aspects, from key management to everything encryption and protection. And in the beginning of the COVID-19, we were selected by Canada to be the representation and face of cyber defense to address all things security, given the escalation of cyber attacks from Russia, China, and Korea, particularly in the realm of UK, Canada, and US. We're also doing some very important work in supporting Canada standards, and we provided the seed document for Canada's first data-centric security standard that was released June of last year. We're currently working on an extended standard for Canada as well around interoperability. It's just a quick glance. Dawn, you said it correctly. There's a lot of work in cybersecurity, defense, government, and then banks. And so we're heavily engaged with the Canadian National Defense, as well as different sectors of departments of Canada's government. And part of it is not because we're big and beautiful, but because every piece of innovation that we have at CryptoMill is proudly Canadian. I spent the first 8 years of my life with scars to prove how difficult it was, but I raised close to $15 million privately so that all that work of cyber stays at home and there is no association to any other country. And that has now become a critical point in sovereignty, interoperability, integrity, which I'll share with you. So we are doing a lot of work there. I'm also co-chairing 2 study groups for NATO. So there's myself, Michaela, and Stefan, two other colleagues of mine, and we are co-chairing 2 study groups since March of last year, both around data-centric security, because NATO and 17, including the Dutch, are moving towards a data-centric approach in protecting data. And so it's a very, very important aspect of working with 17 other nations. And just a quick point that is relevant in the banking context. In the early days of our innovation, we did a contract with HP globally. So HP, as you know, provides all the laptops, desktops. And so we designed an unmanaged version of our Circle of Trust capability, which I'll be talking about. So unmanaged because it came bundled on 40 million HP desktops, laptops that got shipped to 36 countries. And that's important because our innovation is built on a platform which from get-go has been focused on cyber. So although today I'll talk a little bit about our software capabilities, keep in mind that it has the potential to be integrated into hardware or any software business arena. So when I talk in the context of the military or the government or the banks for that matter, it is not a standalone. It's with the understanding that our APIs will provide complete integration as a security layer over an existing business process. Data is the new perimeter. As you know, from a security standpoint, we've talked about always network security, but we've seen the Snowdens of this world and others who've gone in, had access, and once they're in the network, they have access to leaked data. But of course, with the pandemic as well, and working remotely, data has become the new perimeter, and data-centric, as in security that's wrapped around the data, has become a baseline that all countries are converging to. Within the context of the Dutch environment, as you, and I think Shelby, you're Deloitte's. I'm also ex-Deloitte's, by the way, so kudos to that. There was a Deloitte's report on open banking, unleashing the power of data and seizing new opportunities. Again, there, the focus is data protection. I was keenly reading about the Dutch central bank adopting a more data-driven approach. And to Dawn's point, I also read an interesting article last night about the military and your CIO talking about data centricity. So from a bank's perspective, as you know, every bank globally is moving towards a digital transformation. I'm pretty confident that the digital banking system is far more advanced than others. And as they adopt innovative technologies, it is important for them to ensure that risk is minimal, and so data-centric security is key. That having said, I want to jump into a high level of our overall software suite capabilities. So Circles of Trust is our flagship data-centric security software tool that, keeping in mind, can be integrated to any hardware or software business processes. And Blaze and Coda is something that the team designed during the pandemic. Blaze is a portable app to support sharing of sensitive data when working from home. And Coda is a web-based collaboration platform, including secure video conferencing, to stop those early days of Zoom bombing and attacks we were seeing, unfortunately. Vanish is a self-destruct email app that is currently drawing a lot of intelligent operation interaction. And then there is Seahawk, the full disk encryption. The focus of everything we do at CryptoMill is to stop external hackers, stop internal leaks. We address ransomware attacks today from an extortion perspective, and are also adding new capabilities for denial of service. I know that in the Dutch context, we've had some unfortunate attacks, and there are some that we can address as we speak today. We also ensure from a banking perspective that the supply chain vulnerabilities are addressed, and then, of course, the lost, stolen, misdirected emails and lingering data. So let's quickly just take a minute or two to talk about Circles of Trust. So the concept of Circles of Trust ensures a zero trust architecture. And what that means is we still continue to be proudly loving Canadians, but we believe in the concept of zero trust, as in when it comes to data, only those who have a need to have access. So just because you're inside the network of a bank does not give you free will to get access to all client data. So that zero trust is very much a segregated access on a need to know basis, which in turn, such an architecture enables what is known in the marketplace today as data-centric security as opposed to network security. So what DCS is, encryption. We in Circles of Trust use encryption to bind the protection around the data itself. So any personal PII information in retail banking or in corporate banking, that encrypted data can then travel anywhere and everywhere. So based on the business flow of an institution, the security travels with the data, making sure the data at rest, in use, and when you share, both within the bank and outside, the security travels with it. So this becomes a very powerful means to mitigate any attack on any aspect, and it addresses important aspects of ownership, sovereignty, and quantum resistance.
Hey, Nandini, you've
Yes.
got about 1 minute left before
Yeah.
we have to go to the final picture.
No, I totally get it. We've got built-in AI, machine learning analytics, much to what the ladies were describing. There's a lot of information from an attributes perspective on what we do. Here are different ways to access, so you're not just running software. Here's the logs, the visibility is very important. You have full control on what is happening. We provide cross-platform support. We have no backdoors. It's an on-prem, only the institution running it has access. So we provide all the components, no access. Quick bank use case that is very powerful, securing supply chain. Another one I'm working on with my team, and this is the final one, securing digital customer bank statements in a timely manner. And there you have it. I'm done.
Way to wrap it up there. That was amazing. You're welcome. Do we have any questions at this moment for Nandini before we go to our final picture of the day? All right. And with pleasure, I will introduce our last pitcher. It is Karen, and forgive me if I say your last name wrong, Moynihan from Boss Insights.
Hello, everybody. Really nice to be here today. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Just bear with me as I share my screen. Okie dokie. So my name is Karen Moynihan, and I'm a former commercial banker. I was working at RBC and supporting businesses. What I've done is I've teamed up with somebody who was at Amazon who noticed that data does give you an advantage. Now, I've been listening to some of the incredible presentations, and data is so prevalent, it should honestly be a meme at this point. I want to get really specific about what kind of data we're offering and why it is changing the face of the financial services providers we're working with. We're offering a single connection to the global leading number of sources on private business information. That's actually really hard to get. If you were looking for public company information, you would just go to Bloomberg. But how is it that in 2021, almost 2022, we don't have a way to get consent-driven information on private companies so that financial services providers can delight them? That's what we do at Boss Insights. We're working with FinTechs, with private lenders, and with traditional financial institutions. That's banks and credit unions. And we ask them a question. How do you get a greater share of your customer's wallet? Because really, how do you do it? Back in the olden days, and I swear it actually was the olden days, it's over a decade ago, when I started my job at RBC, I was trained to think that businesses would come to us. Businesses would come to us and they would know what they want. They'd come to us, they'd know what they want, and then they would give us all the information that was required to get it done each and every time. That is not the world we live in right now. Google is now the service provider. And when they go to Google, they're looking for the product they need. They're not putting it all together and going to one service provider. They're saying, I need a credit card, and they search for that product. I need capital for my business, and they search. And they're going to find opportunities for that. But here's the thing. These are not necessarily faster, cheaper, and better services. They're faster. So our opportunity is to give all the traditional lenders, the private lenders, and the fintechs big technology that's you can get in 1 hour and give them the way to compete, which is to really proactively serve the business customer. And you see, this is my avatar here. This is what it was like when I was trying to gather this information. It was a lot of incredible opportunities to get degrees, and then I was so excited when I became a commercial banker, and my mandate was to grow my book of business and build relationships, and I promise you my actual reality was more like paper pushing. I had to spend 80% of my time clearing my desk to be able to do what was required to meet my mandate. And there is just no way to compete anymore if you're taking the time to manually gather information, which comes in financial statements, and then calculate them manually. How could you possibly compete with a technical system that does that for you? If you request 2 years of financials, if you request sales information, if you request articles of incorporation, they all come piecemeal by printed reports or PDFs. And as other people alluded to today, PDFs is a very high fraud laden document. You can really mess with that. Every single business loan that I did was approved on the basis of PDF documents. Every single one. So, moving right along, slower, not great, risky, really not great, and costly, well, these are just, it's the opposite of faster, cheaper, better. So Boss Insights is really partnering with our customers so that we're giving them the accurate, real-time, secure, consent-driven information, and we're scoring it. So we will gather it, it comes from different sources, we'll make it all standardized information, and then we can actually score according to what our clients want to see. This is the sales cycle for a lender or a fintech. And these red squares are there because what's happening right now is that every time you need information, you go and request it. You take a human and you ask another human for that information. What we want to do is, well, actually, I'll stop for a minute and say, when a business is requested to send financial statements, they're going into a cloud-based system 50% of the time, downloading it. So they're taking something digital, making it a PDF, which is not digital, and then they go ahead and send it to you. And we think that that is not the most efficient way to operate. And looking at this number here, I wish that this was an open forum, but we did a survey of 37 financial institutions in the same geographic market, and guess what percentage had access to an online application? Like, don't be shy, guys, 8. If you said 8, you guessed correctly. 3. We were shocked. Back when I was a banker, you had your picture on a website, so people would call you. And it really isn't customer centric. And where our CTO comes from Amazon, our North Star is customer centric. What we did is we explained to the FIs, I bet you the reason you haven't created an apply now button is because you think it's expensive and time consuming. And when we put out those surveys, they said, yes, we've made it incredibly inexpensive and you can change that in 1 hour. If you get data all the way through and you have a platform that connects you to your businesses, everything moves faster. It's not days, weeks, or months, it's minutes. And what we've shown is that you can then have the real-time connection to monitor, which is sometimes happening, sometimes not, despite regulation requirements, and most importantly, cross-sell. Go to the business and tell them what product is beneficial to them, which right now is not happening. So what we've done is we've taken the slew of cloud-based systems, usage that's growing with SMBs at 64%, and we've organized it so that people can come to bossinsights.com as developers and sign up and get access to accounting for financial statements and commerce for sales information. Accounting will be for traditional loans, commerce will be for revenue-based financing or for credit cards. And we have supporting documentation with payroll, with tax, and with banking data as well. We're supporting the lending and finance industry as well as the banking industry and FinTech. These industries are growing, especially FinTech, so quickly it's very hard to measure them. But what we're noticing is that there are 25,000 lenders in the North American market and thousands of lenders in the EU market. And these are the companies we're talking to. Our vision is to be the global leader in private business data. And to do that, we need 2 things to happen. First, we have to provide the seamless information itself so it can be usable. And we'll provide that either to the lenders or to the fintechs. We even partner with AI companies to provide more data for their models. But the second is that we have to make ourselves incredibly easy to adopt. You're looking here at the 2 sides of our business. The platform makes us very easy to adopt. If I was delivering data alone, I would be standing here and talking to you about code. And we have that. We do it through APIs, through developer accounts. If there's any techies here, I can say some technical buzzwords and you'll see that I have been educated by our technical team. But what about the front end users? They don't speak code. I don't speak code. They need portals. So we've created portals. When we presented at CB Insights in New York about a month or so ago, this was a live launch of product. So we launched our code, it took 2 minutes, and we showed that you could have a factoring widget put into your own user interface using accounting and commerce data. And that would allow your business customers to go ahead and select any invoices that were over 100 days old. This is a very common problem for businesses, and it would be branded to the lenders. We asked the question, how do you get a greater share of your wallet? And we answered that by saying, use those data connections to get a real picture of your customer. This one needs 7 products: operating line, term loan, credit card, a bump to an existing facility. And if you can see that for the customer and for the portfolio, then you really are working to understand them and delight them. It's a customer-centric approach.
Hey,
So
Karen, you've got about 1 minute to wrap it up.
thank you. I saw the 1 minute. Yeah, thank you. So these are some of the customers we've been working with, and we have case studies on our website. And what we're really focusing again is on having the widest source of data, over 1,000, so that we get more businesses invited by our customers on here, get more data, and eventually more accuracy. So I guess I will use, I'll just say our team is coming from financial services and also coming from tech. So scaling companies like Amazon and Intuit, which created QuickBooks and Points and DealFind. And there's 11 of us at Boss Insights. We're doing a round right now, and we are over 50% subscribed. And we are really excited to be here. So with 20 seconds left, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. That was a great presentation. It is 4 o'clock, so I just want to say thank you now to everyone for showing up, for pitching, for being here. And I'm happy to stay. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask from both sides of the ocean. And thank you all again for being here and for your time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you also very much. I think a very good session. In case we use the B2B2Go platform for further discussions. So I think that the next sessions will start any moment now. So again, thank you very much for all your participations and of the organization, Wyndham, Don, and Esther. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, Mark.
Thank you very much, everyone. Really nice
Thank
meeting
you. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Thank you.
I can't tell if people are frozen or they're leaving. Great.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to go. So it's
To a next, yeah.
yeah. So we are the only ones left, I think now.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Let me stop the
Oh, I
recording.
think very well.